think one thing that's clear over the last few years is the amount or the risk or the numbers of suicides happening, in particular in young males.
Yeah. 75% of suicides are by men.
Wow, that might, I didn't know, is that high? That
Male to female ratio is 3-1. Yeah.
And I'm not sure this
more
case...
more women attempt, but more men die from it. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And one thing I think is important to discuss is maybe something called is hidden depression, where it's sometimes depression is in people that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah. Or high functioning depression, or I think you mentioned the mask earlier on, right? I mean, that's why I say, like each of us are fighting battles other people have absolutely no idea about, because it's mask, right? Which can be so misleading, if not deceptive. So in a world where we can be anything, be kind, because that one cruel word can be enough to push someone over the edge.
I think raising awareness, I mean, that's so true. I think, because you never know what someone's going through. And I think what can people look out for signs of hidden depression? I know it's very hard, but I think that's key, because most of the time it's picked up by a loved one, because the person with hidden depression is never or unlikely going to bring it up because, they deem themselves to be almost not depressed. But what can someone, or how can you pick up on hidden depression if you're, say, just a loved one?
I think some of the more common manifestations of hidden depression would be irritability and being argumentative.
Okay.
Those are some of the more common features in my clinical experience. Maybe subtle personality changes. They may have been more softly spoken, more mildly mannered. But I mean, other things as well. You might sleep more excessively. You might have reduced sleep. You might not necessarily feel depressed, although that's one of the symptoms for the diagnostic to receive on the diagnostic criteria. But yeah, I think it's also the kind of the denial, the minimization. These are some of the psychological defense mechanisms, because maybe we've internalized that stigma. There's the shame. It happens to other people. It happens to weak people. I'm not weak. So I think those are some of the psychological explanations. But how it manifests, to answer your question, I would say usually irritability, sometimes even self-neglect. So they might appear more unkempt or disheveled, or they let themselves go. So there may be some weight changes. Not so much difficulty in concentrating. I wouldn't say that presents, because they are still high functioning, but certainly not. Their cognitive capacity is not as good as it was prior to becoming depressed.
And is a management for hidden depression the same as it is for depression alone, or is it once they've got the diagnosis?
Yes.
So it can be the same sort of
treatment. The treatment's the same. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So this is the diagnosis that's tricky, because I think. And just to be clear, it can, you said high functioning, so by that it can be a CEO of a company, it can be,
it can be anyone.
It can be anyone.
Absolutely. It can be anybody. Yeah. And I think we have to be careful, because we might say to ourselves, I have nothing to be depressed about. But we are all vulnerable. I mean, don't get me wrong, of course, we know that poverty is a major risk factor to developing major depressive disorder. But depression is cruel like that. It can affect you irrespective of how financially comfortable you are.
I think that's important to know. And I think hidden depression is one. I think about a lot, actually, just because, just from a doctor in primary care, I think it's so hard to pick up on, and catching those people early who may well go on to do something more serious is so key. And that's why I just want to, what are things people looking out for? And that was a very clear explanation. And I'll be looking out for that as well in patients, because sometimes it's simple things like you've not seen a patient for a couple of years, or they're not following up a treatment plan, or, this is something I think that we should all have always in the back of our mind, to make that diagnosis. Also,
I would say another big one, I should have mentioned this, social withdrawal. I would say that's another big one as well. So they might be functioning in the workplace. They might be meeting targets, but they are declining invitations for social gatherings, And don't get me wrong, not everyone who is introvert is depressed. I get that, but these are persons who usually they would accept these invitations, but now they are, in a sense, isolating themselves.
Yeah, I think that's an important one. But then again, to know it can be something else. But I think it's important to always have that. If someone, because if someone's coming in, they a high flying business person, and they suddenly they're doing well at work, but so you may think everything's normal. But if there are these things lurking underneath, they're the ones at high risk. So they're the ones I think we need to catch.
They are absolutely, and it's tragically it's not uncommon. Like when there is a suicide, and it's, as I said, it's not uncommon. Oh my God, they were like, I thought they were, on the surface they were so happy, they were smiling. Look at their pictures on Facebook, for example. I thought they were living the perfect life, and it can be deceptive like that for sure. The mask.
Yeah, absolutely.